Growing up in Galilee, using the imagery of a shepherd was a teaching technique because everybody knew what a shepherd did. It was as common as perhaps a school teacher nowadays. Everybody is familiar with what a school teacher does. And that is why Jesus used this imagery of sheep. Sheep are not known as the most intelligent of animals around, and if you've ever been around sheep, I haven't, but I told that's very true. They have not evolved even now, 2,000 years later, to be the most intelligent of animals, and they tend to have a herd mentality. And so if the sheep in front of them jumps, well, the sheep after them are going to jump, regardless of whether there's something to jump over or not. They're just going to do what the one in front of them does. And so the need for a responsible shepherd is paramount to protect these rather dumb, stupid animals that provide an income for them. And so Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. He goes on to explain there are bad shepherds out there, usually the hired hands. If you're just a rent-a shepherd, kind of like I am today, just sort of stepping in to fill in, you're not so good because you really don't care. It's just a paycheck to you. It's just something you gotta do. Just make sure they're still alive when the real preacher comes back. That's all you need to do. But the good shepherd has that long-term investment because this is their sheep. Okay? They're not simply worried about getting their paycheck at the end of the day. They're making sure that this sheep keeps producing wool or whatever income you get from sheep. They got a long-term investment. Their well-being depends upon that sheep. And so it makes sense that they are yours. I think we all know this. We have our own cars. We polish them up real well. We make sure not to leave the crumbs around them. And then you have people like my daughter. She doesn't own her car, and so she trashes her car because she doesn't own it. Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. I know you by name. You can tell who I am because I can come right at the gate. The gatekeeper sees me coming. He knows I'm trustworthy for you and will let me in. And it's those people who come around the back and sneak in. Those are the ones you need to be weary of and to be careful of. Here, Jesus offers himself on three different roles. First as the shepherd, then as the gatekeeper, and finally the gate itself. If this was a three-point sermon, trust me, it's not. I want to be more creative than that. You can say Jesus is the port, the patrol, and the portal. Nice to repeat like that. Jesus is the port because it is the gatekeeper. It is the way that you come in and the way you go out. In other words, when you are let out, you are trusting that this person will protect you and keep you safe from all of the dangers in the world outside of the safety of your pen. You know that while you're outside, the good shepherd is going to be on patrol, looking out for all those dangers that might come lurking at you from those wolves out there. And finally, the portal, the safe way back in. That's the whole three-point sermon. Hope you like it. Hope you get a lot out of it. Because there's another imagery I'd like to leave with you. As I was thinking about who in my life is the port, the portal, and patrol for me, well, it's Mother's Day. You know exactly where I'm going with this. It's your mom. And take a whole lot of imagination to put that together, does it? And so the imagery that I find very useful for this is an apron. My mom wore an apron. Becky doesn't wear an apron. That's why this one's so clean. Sam made this one, didn't you, Sam?
Yep.
Yeah, that's his handprint growing out of a pot. That's very nice. However, we do have a person in our house. Many of you know her as Donna. We call her Granny. I hope I don't embarrass you here, Donna, but she does wear an apron. It's got pockets. Let's see if there's anything in them. Wow, these are meat pockets. And she wears this, I guess, my assumption is to protect her from all of the things that could harm her in the kitchen. She doesn't want to spill stuff on her, so this keeps her looking good. She doesn't want to burn stuff. And so this, in a sense, kind of protects her from all of those dangers. My mother did wear, I'll put this here. My mother did wear such an apron when I was growing up. It was, to me, a sign of her service, you could say, to me. And just as the good shepherd would protect the sheep from the dangers of the world, I knew my mom in her apron would be the one who would protect me. She was always wearing it when she cooked food for me. That was a way that moms care for their children and make sure they eat right. I got to cook dinner last night. Sam can tell you, what did I cook you last night?
Pizza. After
Pizza.
You just bought it.
Right.
You just bought it.
Ignore that pizza as good as anybody. Let me tell you that right now. But a good mom, makes healthy food for their children. That includes fruits and vegetables and all that stuff. That doesn't include grease and cheese in it. It's serving up care. A lot of us still know the saying of hanging on to your mom's apron string. That even has a negative connotations nowadays, but I think it has great connotations that you have somebody in your life that you can hang on to. Somebody in your life that if you're there hanging on to them, you're safe with that person. And of course, we all know serving up love is very important. Jesus probably wore an apron, if not an apron of sort, on Maundy, Thursday, when he insisted upon washing the feet of his disciples. That's powerful imagery of how he cared for his people. That was the lowliest, dingiest kind of job and responsibility you could have. And that's the one Jesus took on. I sometimes think us preachers need to remember that as we get to stand up here in our robes and share our vast knowledge of God's wisdom with you. Perhaps we also need to remember that perhaps our robes are also a sign of the apron, that we wear this because we're there protecting you from all the dirtiness and nastiness that can come your way in life. Jesus wore an apron to be a good servant to his disciples the night before he was arrested and crucified. You could say Jesus aproned up before he offered himself up. Aproning up. I have an apron. I'll show you. I brought my apron.
Oh, no.
Donna knows what this apron is. Becky hates it. Here's my apron. You can see it. It says Pastor Mark on it. I always say I suit up before I go care for my family. Let's see, that's the color of Lizzie and Sam's bathroom right now. This is from the oil. I guess I got it clean. I usually have a bunch of oil stains on here for making sure the cars run well for Becky and Lizzie. Bunch of primer. Got some burns on here from something I don't know what that was all about. But in a sense, I always like to say I'm suiting up. But in a sense, that's the apron I wear to care for my family. I think it's important to think that Jesus aproned up for us so that he was the good shepherd. He wasn't there to be loved and adored by his flock. He was there to care for his flock. He was there to make sure that they were safe, to be the best sheep that they could be, you could say. A parent's love, a mother's love, if I could be more specific and try not to step over any gender bounds. It's always a danger, I suppose, on Mother's Day. But I forgot where I was going with this. The point I wanted to make is that when you do this, when you love in such a way, you are giving of yourself for the good of others. I don't know of any mother, including Becky this morning perhaps, who wouldn't gladly take on the pain of Lizzie so that Lizzie could feel well, and doing it gladly. And I might also throw in here, I always wondered this morning why she didn't trust me as dad to take her to Doc in the Box, but don't tell her I even brought that up. So those of you who grew up with moms who wore aprons, how many of them did your moms wear aprons?
Yeah.
This is being taped, don't say that. I heard that. So those of us who had moms like that, and perhaps your own, you know, when I look back on my life and my mom, one of the things that comes to mind is smell. You know, when I see her apron, one of the things that comes to mind is I can smell bacon cooking. Mom, I don't know if she didn't make bacon every day. I kind of wish she did. That would be nice. But the smell of the bacon. And I knew that when I woke up and smelled and heard that, I would go down and I knew Mom would be in the kitchen making a breakfast for me. My kids never experienced that, I don't know. No, they do on occasion. Or perhaps the sound of my mom's laughter. She didn't cook breakfast for us out of some deep responsibility. Oh, I better get up and make the kids bacon now. No, she was glad to make us bacon. She took her reward, if I could imagine, it would be the joy on our faces when we came down and there was bacon ready for us to eat. The sound of that, of her joy. Maybe you can think of things that would work in the pockets of her aprons. I know my mom's apron, there would always be clothespins. I don't know if my son Sam even knows what a clothespin is. If he knows what a clothespin is, he knows it's simply to put on a bag of chips to try to keep them fresh. But my mom, we used to hang sheets out on the lines. My dad provided her with a dryer, but she thought hanging them out on the line was better. And perhaps it was, I don't know. But that's one of the things that always comes to mind, are those sights and those smells of my mom in her apron. And that apron being to me a sign that I was protected, that I was safe. My mom was in her apron. I knew things were going to be okay. Even though life could be difficult, even as a child, I could always know that even in my fear, and even though at times I think back when I would have to go into the hospital for treatments, my mom would gladly take that away and do it for me, but she knew that she would at least be there with me in my pain, in my suffering. She may not have been able to remove it, but I knew she was going to be there. And that's important. For God as our loving parent, God as our good shepherd, never says that pain is going to be removed, that suffering is not going to be a part of our story. What is taught to us in the Scripture is that we will never be left alone. We will never be left unprotected. That we will always have our God, the Good Shepherd, present with us during those difficult times in life. Even when we run off, we always know that, like the parable of the prodigal son, that father, that parent will be there when we return, trusting that we will find our way back home again. You know, at dinner time, this might have been true for you guys, I don't know, but me and the kids, other kids in the neighborhood, we would be out playing. Okay? We didn't have video games and internet back then to keep us inside. We would be out in the neighborhood running around, kicking balls around, riding bikes. And it was dinner time, and you could always tell moms would start yelling out, "Mark, time to eat." Some families even had bells they would ring outside the door, and when you heard your bell, you knew it was time to come in. In my family, however, it was always my dad who would come out. I guess he thought it was rude to yell out. And so my dad would always come out to wherever we were to say, "Mark, it's time to come back in a gentle voice. It's time for dinner." As I look back on that, there was a tremendous lesson to be learned there. Because he just didn't stand wherever he was and just yell out. But he came to where I was. If it was down the block, a few blocks away on my bicycle, he would walk down to where I was and say, "Mark, it's time to come home. Your mom's got dinner ready for you." And often before he would see me, I would often see him just gently with his hands in his pockets, strolling down the street. And it was a sign of strength. I knew I was protected and I was safe, and that when such responsible things as stopping in my play to go eat a healthy meal, there would be my dad bringing me home. And we would walk home together. Perhaps some words, I don't know exactly what advice he gave me to make sure my debits would match my credits, because he was an accountant. But I'm sure there was more than that, because it was him coming to me. He said, "Mark, it's time to come home." Isn't that the most powerful sign of the Good Shepherd? The shepherd who comes out into the world wherever we are at and gently says, calling us by name, "Mark, it's time to come home," and walks home with us together, like a good shepherd. Who are those good shepherds in your life who taught you such value? How can we, as a congregation, be that good shepherd in the community that we live in? How can we go out instead of simply ringing a bell at the door, or we had a bell tower, saying to the community, "Now come to us"? How can we gently go out and pleasantly be with them and call them by name? Say, "Come on home." As our affirmation of faith, instead of doing what Becky says, because you know I never like to do what Becky says, I'd like us to simply sing the hymn softly and tenderly. So let us stand for our affirmation of faith. Open your red hymnals up to number 479. You can stay seated. You can stand out.